Good Tuesday morning, everybody. Look what came in the mail yesterday. Publishing is, you have to be pretty patient to be have anything to do with publishing. I don't know how long ago, maybe a couple of years, I was contacted by the people at Taishan to get permission to include some of the images of our tarot deck, the Tarot of Ceremonial Magic. And of course, I was thrilled because Taishan has such a uh, wonderful reputation for quality art books. And this is part of the Library of Esoterica. And it's a huge, huge book filled with all color images, some of the greatest tarot images uh, of all history. It's just magnificently beautiful. And when this arrived yesterday, I was anxious to open it up. And to my delight and shock, uh, the frontispiece of the entire book, or the first section, is our tarot card, the Fool. And it opens up the entire book. Stepping into oblivion is, is the is the section, and it's a what they call a double truck. That's both pages, and then later in the trumps, our our lust card is included, and later on, at the very very end, we open it up, and toward the very very end is our nine of discs. So, excuse me if it sounds like I'm tooting my horn, but I'm really proud. I'm really proud of this, and everything else in it is just absolutely gorgeous. Uh, Not only classic works of tarot, but the most awesome, uh, breathtaking modern tarot images too. So if it's in your budget, uh, my only reward for allowing that has been my bragging rights. So, but anyway, okay, there's that. Now on today's reading, I don't know if you can see it, but it's the weirdest day. The last 2 days, there's been so much smoke in the air, coupled with a marine layer and everything else. There's this eerie sort of almost greenish gray, dark uh, sky, and it's really dark. I've had to turn on a bunch of lights. It's not that it's not warm. Yesterday it got up near 90. Uh, but anyway, it's weird. Today we're opening up a new book 4 of uh, our daily reading of Accidental Christ. The story of Jesus is told by his uncle. This is book 4, The Woman at the Well. Uh, and it starts with an epigram from St. John 19, verses 32 and 33. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first and of the other, who was crucified with him. But when it came to Jesus, they saw that he was dead already, so they did not break his legs. And it opens up with a flashback to the crucifixion scene. The centurion directed his man to break the legs of the two condemned who still showed signs of life. This grim duty was dispatched by wedging a large flat stone behind the ankle, forcing the knee forward, then clubbing the leg just below the knee with one mighty blow with a large setting maul. Crippled thusly, it would no longer be possible for the condemned to push themselves into position to breathe. They would suffocate. When the first blow was delivered, the man cried out so loudly that Lazar feared that Jesus would awaken and show signs of life. The centurion carried out Pilate's orders, but was not otherwise privy to the plot. If he were to see that Jesus still lived, he would have his legs broken as well. But Jesus did not awaken, nor did the pitiful cries of agony on his left and right stir him to movement of any kind. The Galilean campaign lasted nearly 2 years. It was wildly successful, but the madness of his double life took its toll upon Jesus. He grew increasingly impatient with the ignorance and stupidity of his Galilean companions, and seized every opportunity to remove himself from their company. On 3 occasions he slipped away from them and did not return for over a week. One afternoon, Simon and Andrew returned from Caesarea Philippi to find Jesus suffering one of his increasingly frequent bouts of melancholy. Sardonically, he asked Simon, "Who do they say I am in the town?" "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets," Simon answered cautiously. "And Simon, who do you say I am?" "I say, you are the Anointed One, the Son of the living God." This was precisely the foolish answer Jesus feared would fall from Simon's lips. Precisely the type of misunderstanding of the message of the coming king that Joseph of Ramtha warned could lead to charges of blasphemy. Jesus believed, in fact, they all believed, that even common men who had ears to hear would grasp Jesus' real meaning, would understand that the coming kingdom meant an end to Herod's rule and the establishment of a new kingdom here on earth, and at its helm would be the true Son of the Father, a prince of the Davidian blood. Yet Joseph and the others, even Jesus himself, had not counted on the thick skulls of the Galileans who now surrounded the Messiah. They took the message at face value, for they could imagine nothing more. Jesus knew that if this simplistic understanding of his message should spread, it might precipitate just the kind of legalistic attack that could crush the plan before it had a chance to succeed. He was also acutely aware that one wrong word could mean great personal danger for himself, the Council of Seven, and all their supporters. These loyal, honest Galileans, who so revered him, could actually be his undoing. How could they be so dense, he thought, his anxiety bubbling over into anger? In an instant, Jesus flew into a rage and called Simon a rock, one of the most insulting epithets in the Aramaic language. Simon was crushed by his master's remark, but even more humiliated when Jesus then launched into a diatribe of bitter frustration, sarcastically telling the stunned disciples that it was upon such a rock, of ignorance that the future kingdom rested. He shook his finger at the frightened Galilean and screamed that none of them should ever again refer to him as the Son of God. After this episode, quite a few who followed him became discouraged at his moods and deserted the movement. On a return visit to Capernaum, Jesus suffered what Brother Apollonius diagnosed as a fatigue of the soul, a mental breakdown so severe that his mother Mary sent his brothers to bring him home for a rest. James, who was growing ever more interested in the movement, even offered to lead the disciples while Jesus was away. Jesus would have none of it and sent them away with uncharacteristic rudeness. Later, he met privately with Lazar and Brother Apollonius and apologized for his behavior. "You need a change, my friend," Brother Apollonius counseled. "Your brothers and their families are going up to Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. They send word they would like you to join them there." "Absolutely not," Jesus said. "How can I face them after the way I treated them, especially James?" Brother Apollonius answers, "The sons of thunder and a few of your followers and their families would also like to observe the feast of in Jerusalem with you. If you would abide their company for the journey, I'm sure they'd be delighted to accompany you to the temple." "But don't you see, it's them I would escape. I cannot endure their idiotic chatter. They try my patience. Now they are telling everyone I'm the Son of God." "Well, perhaps you could ride ahead of them for part of the way. If you like, Lazar and I will secure mounts and accompany you. Let the Galileans tag along behind on foot. They'll be happy as children." "Yes, Master, please," Lazar agreed. "I should like to visit my sisters in Bethany. They know nothing of my adventures. They'd be thrilled to see me. Also," he cleared his throat and looked nervously at Brother Apollonius, "also the Council of Seven sends word that it's time for you to make an appearance in Jerusalem. They realize there's danger, but they now wish to draw out and identify their enemies." Brother Apollonius put his hands on the back of Jesus' shoulders and gently massaged the tension from his back and neck. "If you're still in a sour mood, you can commit some provocative act at the temple. That'll give the council something to talk about." The three laughed at the thought. "Very well," Jesus sighed. Tell the rock and the sons of thunder that we'll go up to Jerusalem. But let them know that I'm weary and will need to ride. You and Lazar will join me on mounts. We'll talk. I'll enjoy that. It will be like old times." The three talked a while longer. Lazar mapped out their route through Samaria and Judea and recited from memory the names and addresses of the agents stationed in the towns and villages through which they would pass. The next morning, Lazar rode to Tiberias and alerted the beloved disciples residing there to relay word of the coming of the Lord. He then went to the Cana estate to secure money for the journey. Mary filled the purse with far more silver than would be needed and begged Lazar to relay her love and concern. He returned 2 days later and found Jesus and others ready to embark. Among the pilgrims was Rhoda, the enormous mother of the sons of thunder. Moments before they set out for Jerusalem, she cornered Jesus and pushed her two sons down on their knees before him. She then struggled to her own knees and grabbed the front of Jesus' robe. Trying not to appear irritated, he asked, "What is it that you want?" "Grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left when in your kingdom." He did not know how to answer. In the last year, he had come to the realization that once he was king, his world would change dramatically. These simple people had no idea to what extent they were being used. Their kind was likely to suffer the most to establish the new kingdom. He couldn't begin to tell her that her ignorant and brutish sons would have no standing in a royal Davidian court, let alone a seat by his side. How could he even explain to this trembling woman that the kingdom for which he was preparing was an earthly affair, not a holy kingdom she imagined? He could not bring himself to lie to her, so he took now familiar refuge in the double speak of the message. "Woman, you don't know what you're asking. To sit on my right and on my left, it is not mine to give. It is for those for whom it is prepared by my Father." He broke her grasp and hurried to the mules, leaving the poor woman kneeling in the dust. The sons of thunder looked at each other with bewilderment. Simon, Andrew, and a handful of other followers overheard this exchange, and as soon as Jesus was out of sight, they attacked the brothers for their presumption. The quarrel was still raging as the procession set out for Jerusalem. Jesus rode ahead for the first few miles, leaving Lazar and Brother Apollonius trailing leisurely along behind the others. "We must get his mind off his great responsibility," whispered Brother Apollonius. "Whenever possible, engage him in conversation upon matters unrelated to the stresses of the kingdom." "Such as what?" Lazar asked. "You'll think of something. He needs diversion." Lazar thought for several moments, and then he urged his mule to the front of the train and joined his master. Brother Apollonius followed. Jesus acknowledged the presence of his two friends, and then turned to see why the disciples were making so much noise. "Lazar, what's going on back there?" "Your army, my lord. They are arguing about which among them is your greatest disciple." "Oh, how I tire of those idiots." Jesus whipped his mule and trotted around the hill and out of sight of the pedestrians. Lazar and Brother Apollonius soon caught up. Brother Apollonius caught Lazar's eye, signaling that he should initiate a pleasant diversion. Lazar acknowledged with a confident wink and steered his mule nearer to his lord. "Master, have you ever known a woman?" Brother Apollonius couldn't believe his ears. "Lazar, that'll be quite enough." He raised his whip and swatted the back of the young man's head. "That's not the kind of conversation I had in mind. It is inappropriate, even for an illuminated, to question a perfect master on such matters of intimacy." "Don't rebuke the lad," Jesus laughed. "He is a man now. We may speak as men. If we were still on the mountain, his class masters would answer such questions." Jesus was quiet for a moment, then tried to suppress a smile as he again turned to Lazar. "Why do you ask, my friend? Do you have sisters?" "Indeed, my lord, I told you, Martha and Mary in Bethany. I haven't seen them for years, and—" Lazar suddenly realized he was being teased and flushed crimson. "Master, I was not suggesting." The three of them shared a hearty laugh. "Yes, Lazar, aside from observing our order's routine calendar of purifications, I've taken no vows of sexual abstinence. As a boy of 10, in my last year in Egypt, I was compassionately introduced to the mysteries of physical love by the doves of the Icean Guild. As an adult, I've known a number of women as a man knows his wife. If ever I should ascend the throne, you can be sure I'll be expected to breed an heir." Lazar was visibly shocked. "But does not the law reserve the marital act for those who are joined by God?" "Of course," Jesus said. "How could it be otherwise?" Lazar looked to his Lord for further clarification. None came. He looked to brother Apollonius, who joined in the conspiracy of silence. Both masters patiently watched Lazar's face and waited for a sign that he grasped the profundity of the answer. When he finally did, the three burst into laughter. A physician is required to understand the workings of every organ of the body and every motivation of the mind. We certainly could not be expected to purge our patients of disease if we ourselves were ignorant of the wonders of our most primal instincts. In our community, one cannot complete medical internship without intimate and first-hand knowledge of all the physical and emotional phenomena. Wed or unwed, it is necessary, indeed a pleasurable responsibility. But since you've initiated such a candid discussion, what about you, Lazar? Do you remain a lamb without blemish? If by that you ask, have I known a woman? Alas, my lords, no, I have not. My nights are restless with dreams of them, and by day it seems I can think of nothing else. I most certainly intend to marry after I'm raised to perfect master. Then you're fortunate that your late father entrusted you to the abbot of Carmel and not the patriarch of the celibate Essenes near the Dead Sea. Otherwise, my friends, there might be no woman in your future. The friends seemed satisfied to ride on without talking for several minutes. Then Lazar broke the silence. Master, where do you go to? When was the last time you... Lazar, that'll be quite enough. This time they both swatted him on the back of the head, and after a moment of laughter, the three rode on in silence. When indeed, Jesus thought to himself. Jewish men were expected to marry. There were very few men as old as Jesus who remained unwed. The few exceptions were those living on the fringes of Jewish culture, hermits and members of the holy orders, the unclean, the sick, and the demon-possessed. As a young Carmelite physician, Jesus had the singular advantage of visiting the numerous non-Jewish territories where gods and goddesses of pleasure were still honored. Greek and Phoenician customs permitted, even encouraged, sexual activities that might be punishable by death in Jewish quarters. Jesus found it particularly significant that in the pagan districts, the instances of demon possession were substantially lower than in areas where Mosaic law was strictly observed. He particularly cherished his visits to Sychar in southern Samaria, where a thriving Canaanite community remained from the time before the building of the Second Temple. These worshippers of the thunder god Baal and his divine consort Astarte emulated their passionate deities in all aspects of daily and seasonal activities. They revered the act of sexual union and celebrated it in formal and informal rites throughout the year. Any man, young or old, Canaanite or Jew, Greek or Roman, who could afford the modest price of an oblation, could be treated to the delights of the roses of Astarte, the sacred prostitutes of her cult. About 2 Roman miles south of Sychar, near the plot of ground tradition held was given by Jacob to his son Joseph, stood the most sacred of the Samaritan brothels. Built adjacent to a deep and ancient well that the Samaritans simply called the wet spot, when I was writing this, I read this to Constance, and we both laughed for about 20 minutes when we got to the wet spot. Excuse me. I'll start that paragraph again. About 2 Roman miles south of Sychar, near the plot of ground tradition held was given by Jacob to his son Joseph, stood the most sacred of the Samaritan brothels, built adjacent to a deep and ancient well that the Samaritans simply called the wet spot. It was known as Jacob's Well by the neighboring Jews, who coveted the land and hoped someday to reclaim it. To dip your bucket in Jacob's well, or show charity to Jacob's daughters, were cliches of masculine bravado acknowledged with winks and nudges by worldly men throughout Roman Palestine. Jesus first visited Jacob's Well at the age of 18, when he accompanied Brother Apollonius on his yearly medical mission through Samaria. Throughout the first leg of their journey, Brother Apollonius tortured young Jesus with candid memories of his past visits, and Jesus pleaded for words of advice. "You are a man now and free of vows of celibacy," the mentor assured his student. "It breaks no Mosaic law for such as you to lie with a prostitute. But remember, my young friend, the roses of Astarte are not like the sad whores of Jerusalem who wallow in the despair of self-hatred and spread that disease to you. A Jacob's daughter loves herself as the incarnation of all that is female in heaven and earth. You will have no choice but to do the same. Take your time and enjoy her company. She may ask questions of you or tease you with riddles or play the harp and sing to you. If she does, be patient and enjoy, for she is disrobing your soul. It is your soul, not your flesh, that she will carry to paradise and take as her lover. She will make of herself an altar upon which you will gladly spill your life's blood. And in the afterglow of that sweet epiphany, you will dream dreams and see wondrous things. You will swear she sees them too, as she sings soft notes that carry you from heaven to higher heaven. When you awaken, she will bathe you and oil you and give you dates and raisins to eat and engage you in Greek or Latin about art or music or whatever delights your mind. Jesus would soon discover that Brother Apollonius was not exaggerating. His first visit to Jacob's well was indeed a journey to paradise. As a reward for their healing services, Jesus and Brother Apollonius were made welcome at the inn of Jacob's daughters. Predictably, the daughters lavished fervent attention on young Jesus and pretended to fight over who would first tenderly raise him to adeptship in the greater mysteries of love and pleasure. For the next 10 years, Jesus never omitted Sychar on his annual healing tour of Samaria, and he considered his friendship with Jacob's daughters as true and sacred as those of family. He owed them more than he could ever repay. It had been 3 years since his last visit. He was certain that once he became king of the Jews, he'd never be free to touch a Samaritan woman again. Lazar? Yes, my lord? We will change the route of our journey. 3 nights hence we will camp in Samaria, at the foot of Mount Ebal. I know that was a little long, but that's where we'll end it today. And tomorrow we'll actually meet the woman at the well. Until then, I hope you're enjoying your week and are staying safe. Continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.